Hello, everybody. So I'm a researcher at Saint-Gobain, so working on the dark side of the force in the private world, sorry. But I will try to present some recent experiments we did, and we tried to play with neural networks, and especially to try to run them on smartphone GPUs for mobile applications. But don't be afraid, I will speak about Python too. So I will begin with Python. So yes, I'm working in the main research center of Saint-Gobain. In the data science team, we are roughly 15 people, and the applications we are working on are mainly marketing and sales, industry, and building sciences. So that's for the short presentation. And yes, for sure, for all that, we are almost everything we are doing is using Python. So we are usually using scikit-learn for all machine learning things, pandas, some Seaborn for visualization. And I will talk more about Keras and Tensorflow today, and also Spark, Cython, and Spark through PySpark. So that are some tools we are using. And we are a B2B company, but more and more projects for B2C use. So we are more, we have projects for end users. That means that we have in the pipes some smartphone applications. And we have some analysis in these applications that we are developing in the R&D center. So the low-level parts of the applications sometimes are developed in our team, at least for the prototypes. But the main question for this presentation is how to go from Python tools we use to explore subjects to mobile applications, because Python is not a first-class citizen in mobile applications. So for the first examples I worked on 2-3 years ago, I had to write full C++ code to be able to run either on iOS and Android. So there was no big machine learning in it, but it's a problem if you want to go from Python to mobile applications. So before dealing with developing mobiles, I would like to present shortly what we did with neural networks. So we began to play with this type of models roughly 2 years ago. I won't go into the details, but in our cases, it could be applied, and we already used it in some of these examples. So for product recommendation, because we have some distribution parts, NLP, it's more specific to us, but acoustics for classification, source separation, or other things. It's also specific to us, facet semantization, and product design through generative models. That are things we have in mind for this last thing. And as Python people, so by Pythonistas, we mainly played with Keras and TensorFlow first, and it's very easy to handle. But we have the first prototypes of mobile application in the pipes, and what to do of our Keras models. So that was our question last year. And there are good news is that we looked at the different machine learning and deep learning frameworks on mobile. So I will present the main three ones, but I just discovered that there is also MXNet that is existing, and there will be a presentation on it in this conference, so I will attend it for sure, but I cannot talk about it because I don't know it. So Facebook, so that are mainly the big US companies. So Facebook developed Coffee to Go. It was announced last year with a demo, but it's not yet released. They said they will release it, but nothing happened. and it's not very Python friendly because it's based on Torch. So there is PyTorch that appeared, but it's quite specific, and it's mainly for Coffee and Torch are mainly lab tools for deep learning. And there is also Google that announced TensorFlow Lite last month at the Google I/O. It's not yet released, but there is a but. I will detail later. The good news, it's Keras friendly. So I will detail also later. And it's very fresh new from April last week. They announced Core ML at the WWDC, and it will be released for everybody in September. It's already released for developers, so it's nice. And the very good news is that you could embed scikit-learn, Keras, and Coffee models inside your iOS application, and they already have tools and documentation to go from these models to their core ML. So it's just an automatic translation. So it's very nice. So it's too recent to detail, and we used TensorFlow. So last year, we wanted to use our Keras model on the smartphone. The only available tools we knew at that time was TensorFlow, because we looked at the TensorFlow GitHub code, and we saw that in the examples there is there was an Android application to demo the TensorFlow capabilities. So we looked at it. In fact, in the reality, it's running on the GPU on Android and the CPU on iOS. I think it will change, but the example of last year was that. It has been released on GitHub since 2015, so it's quite early. There was no announce about that, only one example with no documentation, but it's quite early. So it's the good news. And so last year we tried to adapt this example, to generalize it and to modify it, to be able to play with it for our needs. In fact, the dev that was working on that, the mobile dev, so that it's not very easy to extract the TensorFlow lib, because it was not written for that first. So on the web, you saw only slight modification of the example, but no way to generalize and just build your own app with the lib, and you could build something interesting on it. But the dev is very good and nice. I can give his name to you if you want. And he managed to extract it. And there was also the problem to go from the Keras model to the TensorFlow model that could be used on the smartphone, because it's not a regular TensorFlow model. So you have to translate it. But after some, yes, you have to translate it. Any TensorFlow and Keras model could be translated, but there was again no documentation to do it. And I don't know if you know the details. I won't go into the details, but the fact is that mainly when you save a model in Keras or TensorFlow, you save the model structure in one file and the weight on another file. And for the smartphone, you have to gather everything in a specific protobuf file that is not a regular protobuf one. We don't know why, but and there was no official documentation. But at the end, after some tinkering, we managed to export any Keras model to a suitable protobuf file that could be used on a smartphone. So I just put it in. It's a small script, nothing very interesting but useful. I did a gist of it, and after that, we applied it on a prototype application. So for our needs, the main example we wanted to do is about acoustics. So I will show some example of acoustics. So it's able to run on Android on the GPU. it was important for us to test if it could be real time. So the result at the end is a very rough interface. It's mainly just logs on Android. But it allows us to load on this application any model translated from Keras. So there are memory constraints, but you could use some convolutional networks, LSTM or things like that. So we tested it on acoustics, and here you see that it's an acoustic classification model, and just in this example we detected a jackhammer, for instance. And mainly in the log, here you can see that it's only a fraction of a second to compute and to run a deep learning example. So we were happy that for our needs, we were able to do some real-time analysis, and so we were very happy because yes, with this prototype, we could be able to test if our lab models are working on mobiles, test if they could be real-time, because on some application it's important. And we could test the model, yes, in the field, in the real, because if you have a model that is doing 95% of score on your test and test set, in the real life you have noise, the conditions are not as good, and you can see that it's not as convincing as the result in the lab. So it's important for us to test with non-techies and to put in the hands of real users to see if the results are convincing or not for them. That's the main point. Also for internal demo, just to show we are in a company, if you put things that are working in the hands of big bosses, it's easier to have money to continue to work on that. And also the main thing is that we wanted to be able to iterate fast to create the problems of our lab model that we didn't saw in the test set, and to correct and to enhance it. And the last thing is that so I have after that, if people have some question, I have the application on the smartphone and can demo it on private, not for everybody here because it would be too long. And the last thing is that it's very fun to have your proto in your pocket, to carry it and to test it everywhere. So in the train, in the everywhere, in the bus. So I was playing like a kid. And just, yes, a few takeaways to finish, and it will be over. So as machine learning and deep learning goes out of labs, yes, Python becomes, yes, kind of standard, because you know, Facebook and people from the labs were using mainly Torch and Caffe for deep learning, and it's not really used by if you are not a researcher on deep learning, you will more use Keras and Tensorflow or other frameworks, but mainly based on Python. One good news is that, yes, this type of mobile frameworks are coming. So it's recent, but they will come, and the first one will be on iOS in September. So you could, and it's not only deep learning, also just any or some scikit-learn models could run on iOS. So it's quite nice. And now it's no more. It's no more a problem to export your Python-based model to one of these platforms, because with Core ML it's documented. With TensorFlow we did it, and it will be soon documented by Google. So at least two possibilities to do it. And one very nice thing is that the entry tickets to do some machine learning and deep learning on mobile is now very low, or much lower than before. And you don't need a fancy startup that will tell you how to do some machine learning and deep learning in your application by using their closed source framework. You could do it by yourself or by working with people doing machine learning, but using some open source models. And so there will be much more used of deep learning and machine learning with mobile apps. So it's nice. And the last thing is that, yes, I really love open source. And through this example, you see that you could dive into the GitHub code and you could find some gems and play with them and hopefully contribute again later on this product or another one. So that's it from me. Thanks.